Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to give it just a minute here while everyone gets logged on. I'm Katrina McAfee. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for Association Analytics. And while we are waiting, we have today's fun question is, what is your favorite? I was going to say Thanksgiving because American Thanksgiving is coming up. I know that Canadian Thanksgiving just passed, so it could be any holiday side dish. I very much enjoy side dishes, so I wanted to ask everyone what their favorite side dish is. Mine is my mom's broccoli and cheese casserole that I only get once a year. So yeah, super interested to see what everybody else is. Bill, what's yours?
I don't know. I mean, I think stuffing. I got to go with stuffing. I mean, not just the usual. Like we always have to make one pan of the regular stuffing, and then I always try to bring one that's I don't know, a little bit out of the ordinary. Like I've been threatening for years to make oyster dressing. I've not done that yet, but it's on my list of things to do.
Oh, sounds good. What about you, Christine?
Well, I just put it in the chat, squash. I get squash a few times a year, but I've got it locked in on the holidays, and it's better if you put brown sugar and butter on it. So just saying, in case anyone's wondering how to make a vegetable taste good.
Agreed. What isn't, right? I mean, that's
cranberry sauce with Grand Marnier. All right.
Booze and sugar. That kicks up any side dish. I like it.
There you go. Like that. Brussels sprouts. I assume those are smothered in bacon. That's
fresh rolls with butter. Of course that counts.
Yeah. Right. All right. So I think we could get started. I'm going to turn it over to you, Bill, to introduce the topic. And thanks for joining us, Christine.
Yeah, really glad to be here.
All right. Yeah, welcome everybody. So this is going to be a fun one. I've already learned a lot in the prep leading up to this, so looking forward to digging into this topic. So today we're going to talk about one of really the most important concepts for member-based organizations. It's the value proposition, right? So you can have the best mission, the best vision ever, but without a clear value proposition for your members and your customers, it's going to kind of go unfulfilled. And like everything else we do, the development as well as the ongoing management of that value proposition has to be informed by data. And so, like all of our webinars, we'll tie it all back to how you can inform your value proposition as well as continuously improve that using data. So today we're lucky to be joined by our friends from Halmyre. They're experts in how to develop and refine your value proposition. They've just recently published this really interesting study, or the survey, with results from association professionals, and I think it's going to be really interesting for everyone, and we're really excited to have them. So I'm Bill Conforti, Senior VP of Strategy and Solutions with A2. So I've been doing this software products and services for 25 years, give or take. And with A2, I spent a lot of time with clients and prospects dealing with software, but also consulting on data strategy and engagement. So this is a topic that's near and dear to me. So happy to be joined by Christine Saunders.
Hi, hey Bill, thanks. Christine Saunders, I'm the president and founder of Halmyre. We're a team of 9 marketing professionals, and we're consultants. We provide boutique strategy and plans to help organizations grow, associations in particular. And I've been a marketer for over 25 years, and Halmyre's been around for the last 9 years, and we've been really specializing in associations and the unique challenges of what makes their value propositions tougher than other types of businesses. So please ask me your questions. I know Bill, you will, but please bring it along. I'm happy to share our knowledge and perspective with you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so let's take a quick look at our agenda. We'll do a quick intro and polls. It's actually just one poll today, as usual. We're going to talk through the value proposition model, like how do you formulate that clear and concise and compelling value proposition. We'll look at the impacts that has, like how it can drive revenue and other important success factors for your organization. We're going to look at how data informs and helps you to manage that. We'll tie that back to to Acumen a bit and some of the topics that some of you will be familiar with. And then, of course, we'll have Q&A at the end. Now, to that point, as usual, we want to make this as interactive as possible. I've already have a bunch of questions teed up that I'm going to kind of interrupt Christine at different points and ask her on your behalf, of course, but encourage everybody to jump in with questions and share any insights that you have as well. I'm sure this is something that many of us on the call have either been successful with or maybe struggled with or maybe a little bit of both. So regardless, interested in your insights and your questions. Okay, so who is A2? I think most of you know who we are at this point, but we are in the association analytics business, right? We have a product called Acumen, which is a SaaS platform, integrates and aggregates your data, provides a lot of built-in analysis and visualization, and then some consulting services around that, right? So data strategy, data governance, and similar. And we work a lot with companies like Halmyre because of because the data piece and the strategy piece are so closely linked up. Okay, so really quick with a poll question. This is one of those Likert questions, right, where you have to tell us to what degree you agree or disagree. So my association has a clear and compelling value proposition that is recognized by members. Ooh. Panelists get to participate in the survey today, so that's a treat. So some of you that have been on our webinars before and you've seen our discussion about survey questions and survey analytics would recognize this type of question. Get a gold star for anyone that can name it. Right, this is like one of those survey question no-nos that I've done here, kind of on purpose. Okay, so for the benefit of those that are watching on the webinar, so we have most people either disagreed or were neutral, right? So about just over 30% on both of those. 23% say they agree, and 6% strongly agree, right? So we've basically got pretty much even between the degree that disagree and strongly disagree versus the agrees and strongly agrees. Any big surprises there, Christine?
No, the data is close to what we found in our survey, and we're going to talk about it. One of the things I hope to convey, and we find with a lot of associations, and it makes me wonder when I looked at that, whether or not the thing that's going on about neither agree nor disagree is a lot of times we start working with associations and we say, tell me about your value proposition. They'll say, well, everyone has a different idea of what it is. Everyone's got all these ideas. And so around the management table, or the board table, everyone's kind of got their own view of it. And so I wonder if that's what's going on in that sort of that soft middle space. And hopefully one of the takeaways today is giving you some ideas about how to drive to clarity a little bit more. Yeah, great point. So what I was referring to before about the question is something called a double barrel question, right? And you might remember, right, that's the thing where you kind of ask, like in this question, we say, do you have a clear and compelling value proposition? And we say that is recognized by members. So I would expect that some of the people in the middle might have said, well, we have a value proposition, but our members don't recognize it. And so if anyone is in that boat, if you answered, neither agree nor disagree for that reason, I'd be curious to hear about that in the chat. But that I would jump in, Bill. If someone answered it for that reason, then it's if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? I'm a philosopher by training. Let me just quickly say the answer is no. So you could have if your members don't recognize your value proposition, you don't have one. So it has to be that's part of the definition of them understanding it. So great. So quick tangent, right? Since we're on this topic, and I do know that this could be a whole hour webinar on its own. But so suppose that some of us are thinking, we have
have a value proposition. We have a lot of valuable products and services, but I feel like the members are not in tune with it, right? They don't appreciate it. They're not as aware as we would like them to be. I know that there's no magic, magic wand for that, but what advice would you have for those of us that are in that position?
Well, if management feels confident that there's something of meaning and worth there, and they have signals that there is, and there's lots of things that can give signals that there is something there, even if it's not appreciated, doing an audit will help you understand the two sides to it, which is it actual, and I call it I'm good for my metaphor, steak and sizzle. Do you have a steak problem, your features and benefits? So are you right that you've got real value there? Or is it a sizzle problem that you're not communicating it in the right way and presenting it and connecting it in the right way? Sometimes you might have both problems, but understanding precisely where the opportunities for developing the value proposition, because communicating is equally important as having the stuff, the programs and services.
Yeah. As expected. Okay, tell us about what's keeping executives up at night.
All right, so thanks, Bill. Just a few slides from our summary slides from our recent study. We conducted a survey of association executives on their value proposition, and I want to share some results. And if you take two things away from this next bundle of slides, maybe some ideas for why you should make an investment and what a value proposition actually does for an organization, and what actually a value proposition is. So I do want to explain that model. So that said, the macro, not a lot of surprises here. We did both quantitative and qualitative research. It's interesting, Bill, maybe we asked some double-barreled questions, and we did want to do some qualitative. In fact, we did it in reverse order, because we did the quant and then we did the qual to understand what's going on behind it. So some of the key things that we see keeping nonprofit executives up at night, some of the perennial favorites, non-dues revenues, and volunteer leadership, those are always on people's minds, but found it really interesting, some coming into view, changing attitudes around membership. I think that's a real talking point, and I think it's correlated to the succession planning for executives and succession planning within an association. So how to go about doing those two things, that probably surprised me a little bit. You don't always see that, but more and more being talked about. So those are just some of the super high level themes that you get that feeling, where's the angst out there?
Is the changing attitudes, is that like more of a recent COVID thing, or is that more like, what's been happening over the past, I don't know?
It's interesting, Bill,
decade or more?
In the years that we've been doing this, it's gone from sounding like, oh, how do we get millennials to join, to realizing, oh gosh, millennials are kind of getting old and they're the sweet spot now. So it sounds different now, and everyone's like, well, how do we get the Gen Zers involved? And I think there's we could go on and have a whole session on this. I think there's a misperception about what the Gen Zers want and how to connect with them. But there's definitely an angst. I don't know that it's different. It's just managing change. It used to be millennials, now it's just Gen Zers, now that the millennials are in charge.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just look from the survey, and it mirrors, and thanks for that, the opening poll question, Bill. When we did a broad-based survey, self-declared, 54% were the top two boxes of having a value proposition that's approved and aligned within the organization. And that's part of it as well. It's not just, is it well received by the members, but is it approved and aligned internally, like everyone on the same page? So the top two boxes there is 54%. So that leaves the question of where's everyone else, and what's holding the other 46% back. So I want to talk about the benefits that these 54% received, and I think that's on the next slide. So of those people who declared that they had a strong value prop approved and aligned, there are a number of benefits. So Bill, I'll get you to move forward. Okay.
As we do that.
Or stop at any time, and anyone else can ask questions at any time. I love them.
Just a quick question about the other 46, right? I mean, we talked about this kind of leading up. The 54 was a little bit surprising to me, that not so much that there really were 54%, but just the honesty of the responses, right? if I'm an association leader, an executive, to kind of admit that, that the value proposition is not clear is kind of interesting. But so among those 46%, what do you think are some of the most common reasons why they struggle?
They don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. We heard that in the qualitative. One of the biggest ones is we don't know what it is. The other one is I'm too busy running the race every day to stop and think about it. And so those are two barriers, knowledge and resources to do it. And so when you look at that 22% attached to the red there, no value proposition and no plans for one, that's the honesty. It's like, because value proposition is such a, well, why? Of course I want a value proposition. Like, even if you don't know what it is, it's like, of course I want to have one. It's sort of very intuitive management concept that most people try to grapple with. But I think there's something very honest there. I think I think we do also hear in some of the research that we did that and your question about COVID is what's happened in COVID is there's been a renewal and a reset for a lot of, I call COVID, COVID's a lot of things. I call it a lot of things, but within my professional life, I call it the golden age of associations because it really brought focus and purpose to a lot of organizations. People needed solutions. People needed answers. People needed connection really badly all of a sudden, and there were the associations responding. And so we have a lot of associations now really putting their heads up and go, wow, that was amazing. Our membership grew, or we got more people, webinars or whatever. How do we keep that going? What was it that made that? And how do we bottle it and keep that going? So I think that's my COVID insight in terms of that gap.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's that thing about resources. So we do that sort of whole question on different topics, like what's your number one obstacle to this or that, and pretty much no matter what the topic is, the number one obstacle is always lack of resources in some form. So that's it's interesting to hear that about this one as well.
It is for sure. It's tough. I get it. But I think there's a problem we talk about in another presentation we do. We call it, like, associations are riddled with what I call last year-itis. Right? And everyone, as soon as I said it, you chuckled. Everyone else gets exactly what I'm talking about. And last year-itis is actually one of the biggest enemies of a value proposition, because as we sit and look at the model here, I want to take people through and explain why last year-itis, because last year-itis can be, not always, but can be a real drain on resources, because you start, I call it, you start acquiring things and you have to do them, and then everyone expects you to do them over and over again, and they're modestly successful, and you want to make them better, so you keep doing them and doing them and doing them. And so that can be a real drain on resources if they're not super effective. But let's just let's put that in context here, the value proposition model. So for everyone who uses the phrase and maybe does, what is it? Like, and it's that lack of knowledge of exactly what is it can be a barrier to getting your whole organization on the same page. And that's why it's really important. And but look at this model. Okay, customers want, your members' wants and needs. What are your competitors doing? And what are your programs, features, and benefits? And how many of them are really in that, what we call it the red zone, that unique, better, or best place? Like, how many of what you do every year are unique, better, and best at fulfilling a very specific need or want? I'm a marketer, so I love the wants, I love the feels, right? And that is the model. And so as an organization, when we work with associations, we get them into the red zone, and everyone starts using that language saying, is this in the red zone? Yes or no? How do we know? How do we know if it's in the red zone? Yes or no? What indicators do we have that? And this is the key, and why last year-itis is a problem. How do we know it's still in the red zone? Here's the problem with last year-itis and resource drains, is that this matrix, this Venn diagram, is changing all of the time. Okay, and I'm also going to connect it back to the work and why are we're marketers. I said we're a group of interdisciplinary marketers who do strategic planning. And really what we're assessing here is your marketplace. Your competitors are in your marketplace. Your members and prospective members and past members are in your marketplace. What they want and need is perpetually changing. What your competitors are doing to earn their time and attention and treasure their money is constantly changing. So because those two things are in motion, your value proposition is changing on a regular basis. So osteoarthritis can be a bit of a drain because if you just keep doing what you did without knowing for sure you're still in the red zone. So hopefully everyone can take that image away and say, oh, okay, I'm clear now on what it actually is.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I personally don't see associations taking competitors into account very often, right?
One of the biggest weaknesses, yeah, Bill, I'm just vehemently agreeing. 50% of the time we'll start with an association. Well, we don't have any competitors. We're the only ex-association in the state. Well, no, you're not. You're competing for their time. You're selling professional development. You're competing with alumni and universities, some private institutes, other regulatory or national, or now that COVID's happened, international. Like, in fact, you're in a big competitive set always because people only have so much mental attention they can give you. Right.
All right.
So the basic questions, this is deceivingly simple. It's deceiving because it's not simple. And the precision is really important when you're doing your value proposition work. So you have that Venn diagram. So now you got the picture, you want to get in the red zone. You answer 4 questions. Okay. Who is it for? And you can't just say, you need more adjectives and precision than just, dentists, if you're the dentist association, or librarians. What do they want or need? Let me just help everyone out here. No one is walking around going, I need networking. Okay, there's actually something else they want and need. No one is walking around going, you know what I need? I need a newsletter. That doesn't mean they're not going to appreciate their newsletter. They're not walking around thinking, you know what I need is a newsletter. It's just unlikely to happen. So really getting at those insights about what they want and need is where the precision and success and growth really comes from. Who are you? Understanding what you are better, and then understanding how you operate. And you're not allowed to use the word association when you work with us. And then what do you do uniquely, better, or best? So those are the 4 categories of questions. And that's what will underpin that Venn diagram. So those are the 2 basic management tools I want everyone to have leaving here.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna jump into impact, but as we do that, if anyone wants to be brave and give us take a shot at telling us what your members need, I'll be curious to hear that, and we'll ask Christine to take your word.
Love it. So the impact, so you can move right on. So we ask, remember that 54% who said they're feeling pretty good, that they've got a value prop that's clear and everyone's on the same page internally. So that means everyone, be a 1-person shop and the board, or a 15 or 30 or 40-person shop, you're all on the same page. What happens when you do? Customer engagement is higher for you than it is if you don't. Revenue and pricing is higher, or the confidence that you're not leaving money behind is higher. And to us, these 2 feed into this next one, but this is the pinnacle for us, is they're resilient and ready for what's ahead. And of course, no one really knows what's ahead. No one knows what's around the corner, elections and pandemics and environment and climate and economy, and no one knows. But they feel more prepared to weather and succeed and thrive through that. And that's that resilience. So to me, these are the starting for anyone who's like, well, how do I get the resources to do this? You've got a business case here. Who doesn't want more customer engagement? Who doesn't want more revenue or confidence that you're not leaving money here? Who doesn't want to be ready for the future? These are from that 54%. All right. So that concept of resilience, it's strengthened, and I can't say enough about it. This is why I just have a call out. A lot of consultants and education in associations like talking about innovation. And I don't know if you can see my hands, but it's like, ooh, yeah, there is innovation. Innovation is continual change and staying fresh in your value proposition. And that another way to say that is that you're resilient, that you have the resources in the future to continue to meet the changing and evolving wants and needs of your members. That's resiliency for an association. All right. And we prefer to frame it that way. It's not to become more boring. It's just to become a little bit more grounded and planned than innovation can sometimes do. Similarly, money on the table, we talked about this. The flip side of that stat, where 40, the first stat I gave you was that for those who felt good, that 54% feels good about their value prop, really feel like they're getting the most from their revenue. Let's look at the 46%. Your 60% of those people don't feel good about it. They feel like they're missing something out, but they can't quite put their finger on why. And we're going to talk about what really briefly, and the report talks more at length about this, but how pricing is intricately tied to value proposition, that you can't separate the two. So it's a really important business case. It's like who wants to be leaving money on the table, right?
All right. So Christine, so one of the things that I'm curious about is, so we just touched really briefly on pricing, right? And then I think one of the broader discussions here is how to get the right mix of products and services, for a complete and compelling value proposition. So with those two things in mind, my question is, would you say that if I'm leaving money on the table, or if I'm an executive that's concerned about leaving money on the table, is it more likely that I feel like, hey, I'm not getting enough value for the services that I have, right? My pricing is maybe not as aggressive as it could be, or my mix is not quite right. Or it's like, hey, look, there's some other opportunities that I'm just not taking advantage of, right? My members, I'm not giving them everything they need because there's an underserved market here. There's an unmet need that I can take advantage of and then earn more revenue because of that.
The short answer is both. It's a little bit all over the map, Bill, like in terms of where the gaps could actually be. So when we do pricing work with clients, we really pull it apart. The more common diagnostic, I wanted to answer your question, just to give a little bit more context for people listening. The more common diagnostic we use is, and associations, this isn't a strength of associations, but we break it down to product-based pricing and saying, well, on the one hand, associations will charge, it's $100 for the CPD credit, or it's $300 to come to this conference. What they're not always as great at is understanding the profitability matrix. And what happens to their pricing strategy is that they're actually deploying like 8 pricing strategies all at once, which it's actually confusing to everybody. So they're losing money on this. They steal it from Peter to pay Paul. Like they lose money on this and they make a lot of money on this. And so everything tends to be all over the map. And if I left anything, in addition to the financial side of pricing, it's the psychological side of pricing and understanding what is valuable and how to bundle it together. And I just want everyone to think, the meal deals at McDonald's, because we all, I know we're getting into Thanksgiving, but let's put up our hands. Like they managed to give us more. They give us more. We feel like we've gotten more. We feel like we've gotten a deal, and it's actually cost them less. So, and they do that because they're really, really confident about what's important to us, right? And they know how to tap into that. And so bringing back where an executive can be unconfident about they might be missing out on revenue, it could be on the product level. It could be there's something else they're missing altogether. Most often it's because they don't have a pricing strategy and it's all over the map. And that is actually inadvertently communicating lack of confidence. So, Bill, I don't know if that helps, and I'm open to a follow-up question actually, but yeah.
Yeah, it actually, I mean, I don't know if this is the one you're expecting, but the question that I was thinking of is, well, how often should I revisit my pricing strategy then, right? Because we said sort of that the value proposition is something that is, evolving
Dynamic.
all the time, and we need to manage that. And and our pricing is very closely linked to that. So should we really be changing our prices all the time, or?
No, you shouldn't be changing your prices all the time, but you should be evaluating them all the time. So changing your prices all the time or changing your pricing structure all the time is not good for business, because it's confusing and people have to understand how to engage with you, and price is a key price of entry. And but you need to be evaluating it all the time, and it really is the very close cousin of value proposition, because it is equally dynamic. Your costs are dynamic, the business needs and strategies are dynamic, so what you need to fuel with that money. Labor costs are dynamic, everything's dynamic. Your competitors are dynamic, so therefore the quality of your product is dynamic. So evaluating it regularly is an important management behavior that leads to that resilience. And too often it's not done methodically enough with a product mindset in place.
Great. Yeah. So Roxanne brings up in the chat about inflation, right? So in addition to all of the internal things about member needs and wants and all of that, we have these external environmental factors that we have to keep in mind as well. I don't know if that was part of the Venn diagram, right? But that's sort of out there, needs to be considered as well.
Very, very related. And if there's one thing, probably the last 15 associations I've spoken to over the last few months are like, should I raise my rates? Yes. Like I haven't raised my rates in 10 years. Is now a good time? Yes. Because so if anyone's in there, please call. I'll give you some free advice, because it's a real mission. Because in fact, by not raising them, there is a psychology in associations, which is we're doing our members a favor. And there are always exceptions, but the vast majority don't need that favor, actually. What you're trying to do is be empathetic. There are other ways to do it without attriting the resources you have, because if inflation is going up, your costs are going up, and if you stay the same, you have fewer and fewer resources to work with to deliver value to them. That's not in your members' interest. Your members want maximum value. So that's the balanced dance of pricing and association.
Right.
And then this is, a deeper insight. I mentioned this one off the top, but customer engagement. If you've got one, if you've got a strong value proposition, your finger is on top of where engagement's coming from. Okay, so they're just through the roof numbers saying, it's growing. My level of engagement is growing. And that can be clicks to products, but it can also be, Bill, I think later on you're going to talk about the evolution of a member and the stages of a life cycle. So that could be just clicks to that brand evangelist kind of key champion and really deeply and richly involved person. So they expect that trajectory to increase. And it's just so lights out stronger if you have one of the value propositions, partly because you're really in command of what do they want and what do they need. Right?
Great. So I want to ask like a sort of an informal poll question here, and I know that a few people answered about what their members need, and so just in a couple more slides we're going to pause, and I want to get Christine's comments on those. But right now, as it relates to customer engagement, just really quick informally, how many in the audience feel like they have a good and effective way to measure engagement, right? To score it, right? We talk a lot about engagement scoring, but if your engagement did improve, how would you know? None at all.
I love the honesty. It's a great place to start, being frank.
Okay, so that's kind of a good good segue. Okay, email and social analytics. Yeah, those are email is a good one. Social and hard to measure for sure. Social analytics are an interesting one because you can kind of measure engagement there, but we very rarely connect them to actual members or customers. It's more just like an aggregate view of things, but labor intensive way. There we go. Okay, so as expected, right? This is something that we're going to talk about here in a bit, but it's also a good segue to analytical abilities.
Yeah, for sure. And Bill, I'm just gonna, I love sharing my ideas. If I was running an association and I didn't know what it was about, and I only had one metric to measure engagement, speed of renewal.
Okay.
As a leading indicator of whether or not they're with me or not. But that's not the way the world works. Everyone gets many metrics and puts it together for a picture. But my colleague has a blog on this, and that's his theory. He's like, well, if you only to pick one, what's the ultimate thing? So how fast do they pay you? How much friction is in their mind to go, should I pay them again? Right. Anyway, I just share that for everyone to think about, and not to take away from all the other data, because data and the analytical abilities and the ability to use data, as we explore this in the full report, is really important. And I think it's one of the reasons why, you know, the shared platform is really good with association analytics. And I want you to think about your organization, but where are you? Because a sign of a resilient, remember I talked about that concept, resilient firm, is one that is on a journey of data. And that journey is twofold, and I'm oversimplifying it, but it is gathering up data in all your electronic systems and putting it in a way that's easily accessible. So that's where organizations like A2 comes in, amongst others. But then it's also the skill and the know-how how to read it and apply it intelligently to make changes within your program's features and benefits. And so, and those are two different skills, and they're related. You can't have one without the other, but the ability for an organization to look at their data, listen to it, ask hard questions and honest questions, which are coming up here in the chat, I can see, and going back and continually changing and to get better, that is the heartbeat of resilience, because you are evolving based on data. And that function, so for all the organization leaders and the membership people out there, do an honest assessment about where you are on this map. Are you analytically stuck, impaired? Are you on the road to being analytically driven? And it is it never ends. Data never ends, everybody. It never ends. And Bill can talk a lot more about this, but get on your journey. And I promise you, one question will lead to the next. Bill, I'll flow it back to you. I'm kind of talking in your stuff here, but I know our clients who grow the most are on a road from impaired to driven.
All right. Okay, so when I look at this, I think of the Gartner, like the Magic Quadrant. And so the bottom left is quadrant number 1, top right is clearly number 4, right? That's where you want to be. That's your Magic Quadrant. But with respect to the other two, like which that's quadrants 2 and 3. Would you label one of them clearly 2 and the other 3, or?
No, I think it's hard, because I think the way we've laid it out here and the way we think about it, you need both. You actually need the technical abilities of pulling the data together, and again, like your firms, and the knowledge about how to display it so it's useful and it's not. I saw some comments in the chat about, oh, it's really high intensity to measure engagement, like it's very manual. You don't want it to be that, because you're never going to do it and you're not going to act on it because you're exhausted from putting it together.
Yeah.
So we really don't see a 2 in it's are you on that diagonal here? Because you also need the mindset, and it's an organizational mindset as much as a person or like a thinker on your team who will drive what do we do with this data? What's this data telling us? What should we be watching in next quarter?
Yeah.
If we see it again next quarter, what are we going to do about it? That very discussion is the heartbeat of resilience. Agreed.
So great answer. So just for what it's worth, if I had to number them, I would say that the access and availability is probably 3, and the other one is 2. Meaning that if you have to start somewhere, I would start with the access and the availability, and then because analytical mindset, that's like more of a long-term thing. Plus, you can hire, you can hire for that. You can change your HR policies and things, but that's more of a long-term solution, whereas the access and availability is something you could take a pretty big step towards solving today or tomorrow if you wanted to do that.
There are often very easy steps, relatively easy steps, and I can agree on this, easy steps to get on that journey of gathering up the data that you have. And you don't have to do it all at once. You get 1 or 2 sources, and then you start asking questions, then you get the next one, and off you go. So some things that we like to see at a strategic level are making sure people really understand what's going to make your organization successful. And I have a soapbox I can get on. A lot of strategies around mission and vision stop short of these key success factors. And by all means, contact us. We've got another whole white paper about key success factors, why they're really important for associations. Key performance indicators, those are the measures. And Bill, I think that goes to your question, how are you measuring engagement? How do you know? And I always like to talk to clients about lagging and leading. Like there are things that are going to tell you historically, like that follow a type of engagement versus the more predictive type, and having a balanced approach on your dashboard is really important. Really understanding your segmentation and who is driving your growth, and who are you targeting, and what do you want them to do. And then again, your own assessing taking an honest look and saying, what do we need? Do we need technical help putting things together? Do we need technical help? Do we need strategic help? Do we need, as you say, in-source or outsource? What do we need? Because we need a little bit more than my answer to everyone on this call, and this goes for my own firm, we need a little bit more than we have today when it comes to data. All right.
Okay. Yeah, so Rose has a question in the chat. She says, what's the difference between KSF or key success factors and KPIs? Could they be the same?
Right. So I'm going to try to give an example. Key success factors are, when we write them, are usually qualitative. There might be a number, but they're big and they're leading the organization. So let's say you run a professional association. I'm going to make this up. Maybe you run a younger professional association, and one of your issues for your members is career tenure is short. Key success factor for the association is to help move career tenure from, let's say, 5 years in and out. So, I'm thinking of some lower paid professions that are vital, but maybe moving that to 7 years. And so all of a sudden, you can start measuring projects and engagement points and saying, oh, they're doing more CPD, and oh, we're doing more things that are going to help them have a longer, more satisfying career. So that's an example of how two things work together. Let's say you want a 5-year career tenure, and you say, well, no, we want our members to have, let's move that in over 5 years to 7 years. That's a good key success factor, because you'll have a lot better members, more retention, more engagement. And then the key performance indicators are they engaging with the right content? Are they doing the right things that we know we can deliver that will enable them to have a longer, more satisfying career? I will follow up and pause and say, does that answer the question? I'm happy to try again if that wasn't clear.
Yeah, I think let us know. Yeah. So is it fair to say, would you agree, Christine, that is it fair to say that the key success factors are kind of like your goals, like your broader goals, and the KPIs are how you measure your progress towards those goals? Is that?
That's a good way of just putting a handle on it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
So there's a data intelligence, and we're getting ready for a handoff to association analytics here, because again, I feel like I'm talking about something you guys know so much more about, Bill, but you want that key performance indicator dashboard. I like seeing successful associations have one for the board, have one for executive, and have one for day-to-day management. And if you're a large organization, you can split that. Or if you're a small organization, so you get one dashboard, but you're looking at different levels of data. Making sure that you have a practice in place. So that's that behavior you want to get into. That's that journey you want to be on. And there's never any judgment of a journey, because in my view, data is a journey. What is vital is that you're on it, and then you're looking at the next step.
Great. Okay, so we're going to transition into more in depth on how data can inform your proposition, as well as the management of that. That part will be a little bit faster. So I want to go back. So I said I was going to ask for input on some of the statements about what do their members need. So this is, I just scroll back in the chat quite a bit. So Beth Ann said, some members need someone to do the things that need to be done that they usually do off the side of their desks. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's been a while. So Beth Ann, if you would clarify what some of those things might be, it would be a little, it seems to me that that's a little granular, right? I mean, right. So should we be looking for something a little higher level for what members need, or does that sound right to you?
No, research support. Yeah. So Beth Ann, I was going to go similar with you, and I was imagining what you might have been referring to. So research support, committee, or support for committee work.
Okay.
So, the thing I thought as the example when I first heard the question is like, oh, well, some associations lean in and do market making. We call that an activity, market making activity, which is, looking for, I'm just making this up, looking for a podiatrist in your neighborhood, put in, here's a list of our members. And and driving leads. That's what we call market making for an association. So a lot of the times for a podiatrist, maybe marketing themselves is something they end up doing off the side of their desk. So that type of utility can be really, really, really valuable, but understanding precisely what that is. Some of the examples I think that followed up in the question, like support on committee work. Yeah, they want to do the committee work, but they need a little bit more administrative support. Total fair game. And it is something that's going to make them feel more successful. So I think it doesn't have to be grand and lofty. Sometimes it's just solving, and this is, marketers love this, solve the pain points.
Yeah.
What's the burr under their saddle today? Like, how do you just make it easier for them, right?
Yeah, Jill says, in fact, that we've asked our members to identify pain points so we can find potential solutions, right? I mean, so whether you ask explicitly or whether you sort of determine that based on other things, right? That's really the name of the game. Yeah.
Pain point. So I do like when you get really good at this. And so understanding their pain points, huge. And understanding the different ways that they, and this is a broad-based one, particularly for professional associations, pain points for trade associations is pretty straightforward. For professional, you also really want to know what is success for them, as in forgetting about you, just as they go about their day-to-day life. What does success look like? That can be a little nuanced to get to, but once you get your finger on it, for your profession, your professionals, very, 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 very powerful to understand that, you know, there are three types of members. One of them wants success financial, one of them wants success stature, and one of them wants success, intrinsic success of just learning and learning and learning and learning, because that's what gets them out of bed every day. So once you understand what those things are, you can really start to market to them and connect your products and services. So thank you for the follow-up.
Okay, great. So there was another discussion going on about auto renewals, because you brought up the speed of renewal as a metric. I just happened to have an interesting conversation the other day with an association that they have auto renewal. And so one of the things that they want to track is they basically want to replace the membership termination date with the credit card expiration date, right? Because they want to know when they have to be concerned about that. So, and that's kind of related to engagement, because we do see a majority, even in many cases, of individuals that renew, you know, very, I would say religiously, but they do it year after year, right? But yet they're not doing some of the other things that you would want them to do from an engagement perspective. And it's like, it's because, and those are the ones that you wonder, are they really clear on the value proposition, right? Because they're not engaged, but they continuously renew. So that, again, that's a
number of clients for whom we have the interest. We call them, in one client, they take different shapes. We call them interested observers.
Yes.
And association, particularly if you're heavy into advocacy, just because they don't fill out surveys and show up at events and do all that kind of, doesn't mean that they're not watching and that they're happy you're doing that work. So it really depends on the material. So you can actually have a silent, really very engaged, psychologically engaged Bill, but not showing up on certain other dashboards. So you do have to be careful, and it does depend on the association.
Great point. Great point. And if you have a community, you should always be mindful of all of those page viewers and searchers. They don't all post and comment on all of your things. So, okay. So look, so the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be talking maybe 8 minutes now that I asked a few too many questions. I'm going to talk about the relationship between data and analytics and your value proposition. And we'll have it's really boils down to how we look at engagement. Okay, so we're going to tie all this back to engagement and how we, what's the journey, you know, for engagement? How do we get members more committed over time? So we have a lot of materials on that. There's an ebook at the end. We have several hour-long webinars on this topic, which I would encourage you to take a look at. Maybe I didn't ask you, Katrina, to find them, but if you have the links, you could put in the chat. That would be helpful. But anyway, so we have in the center here this idea of our unique value proposition. There's the 4 questions: who's it for? What do they need? Who are you? Right? And then we have all on the left. We have these data sources, right? Your AMS, maybe your LMS, your website and your content, your community. And there's a process of integration, right? Because we want to integrate the data. We want to learn about the members. What do they want? What do they need? And that informs our value proposition, right? And then once we do that, we analyze that data and we do more advanced things, right? We have engagement scoring, maybe we have predictive analytics, we have financial forecasting, right? Which informs our pricing. So we do that analysis, and that helps us to refine our value proposition and to continuously improve it. So that is, I think, in a nutshell, what the relationship looks like. This is not a sales pitch for Acumen, but that, a tool like that is something that can help you do that, right? Integrate and aggregate that data, and then provide some meaningful analysis to provide that good value proposition. To the point about key success factors in our KPIs, if you don't do anything else, maybe you don't score engagement, and maybe you don't do predictive analytics, but you really do need to manage performance, right? So you need to connect those KPIs to your key success factors. You have to get it on some kind of a dashboard. It may not be as fancy as this one, but something that everyone in the organization can look at and know that they're doing the right things to contribute to advancing, the value proposition. All right.
Bill, if I could I jump in, Bill, and just say
course.
one of the great things about a dashboard like the one you're showing, and for everyone, when you hold it in mind, whatever solution you pursue, it's visual, and visual pictures are really important. And I see that there. So it is, yes, numbers, and yes, you got some arrows, but visual pictures tell 1,000 stories. So big fans of that. Don't just give yourself numbers. It's very hard to process what they mean.
Great, thank you. So when we talk about member engagement, again, there's a whole hour on this, so I'm not going to belabor the point here, but we talk about that as an exchange of value between the members and the customers and the association. And the idea is to achieve some balance there, right? That sweet spot is your mission-driven, brand advocate, highly engaged member. And if the better you are at clarifying that value proposition, the more likely you are to reach members like this and to create members like this, right? They're moving them up the commitment curve, right? And so this is that representation, right? So when you think of a value proposition, it's your mission. It's part of it is the mission and vision and the more abstract things, but a lot of it boils down to what are the products and services that you offer, and how does that contribute to your picture of what it means to be an engaged member. And so we call that the engagement model, and it's represented in a donut, and the size of each section, each section of the donut is related to an activity. The size of the section is related to kind of the relative importance, right? And that's kind of subjective. You say, look, this is important to us, this is important to us, and this behavior is not so important. And together, you can calculate what it means to be an engaged member. And that's very closely related to how members perceive and engage with your value proposition. Okay, so that's, you take that model and you score engagement. And when you score, you're able to compare members to each other. You can understand their engagement journey, right? And important thing about this is this idea of inflection points, right? And those are the yellow ones. And if you look at all the activities, and if you're able to score engagement, you'll see that certain activities are kind of, it's a point where I go from being not very engaged to more engaged, and then ultimately to really connected with the organization. And your inflection point behaviors might be a little bit different, but usually continuing education is really important. That's a really common way to connect with the value of the organization. And then when you get really connected, volunteering, donating, contributing content, things like that. All right, so you might see something like this. Your engagement scores in the bottom deciles are interested, and their mix of activities might have one emphasis. As I move up to active, without caring a lot about what the engagement behaviors are, you can see that they've changed, right? So as I become more engaged, I engage differently with the products and services that the association is offering, right? So it doesn't mean the value proposition is different for me. It just means that I experience it and I interact with it differently. That was an interesting conversation that Christine and I had, which is, hey, look, is it really a different value proposition, for one segment of members versus another? And clearly the answer is not. So I have to admit, I was on the fence on that leading into the conversation. And so now I get it, right? And so the the name of the game is to have more people that are in the upper deciles or upper tiers of engagement. We call them connected. You might have a different name for that, but the point is to understand the mix of behaviors and activities that correlate with highly engaged members, right? That are connected, that lead to that sustainable growth, right? All of those impacts that Christine mentioned before, the revenue, right? You're not leaving any money on the table with people in 8, 9, and 10, right? It's all the ones in the other deciles, right? There is that loyalty, and that leads to the sustainability, because even if you have a lot of people that pay dues and that don't engage, they will keep the lights on, but they're not the future of the association, right? Really advancing the mission, volunteering and creating content and, being on your board and stuff like that, typically. Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of how it looks, right? You have your engagement score on the left, you have your commitment along the x-axis, right? Your engagement score really correlates to things like revenue, to loyalty, to resilience. And then on the bottom, our commitment is really that idea of sustainable growth. So if we can connect more people more strongly, to our value proposition, then it leads to all the good things that we want for our association. So that is a really, really high level, quick view of the relationship between those things. You really should have a tool that helps you to collect and aggregate that data, as well as to calculate and to measure it, so you'll know that you've improved. Okay, so I'm going to give Christine the last words here.
Thanks for that. This is almost a little bit about Halmyre and how we think, but I want to give this as a gift to organizations, because we've talked a lot about why the business case. We talked about what a value proposition is, but like, how do you get started and how do you justify those resources, which are so hard fought for? And that's a big barrier, as we talked about the adoption, recognize it. Value proposition is your role in your dynamic marketplace. And so when you think back to the red zone, that's what, 2 out of 3 of the things are changing on you, whether or not you change. So you need to be changing, and it's also the source of growth. And some associations have a hard time with the word growth. And I appreciate Bill used it on the last slide. You're like, oh, well, we're not here to really, what if we have 95% of the marketplace? And the answer is, you must be growing and getting stronger and better in some way, or you will find yourself attriting and shrinking because your marketplace is changing, unless you're really lucky. That's fine. But top line revenue we work with, that's a core. It's just a core fuel for the organization, and it's an easy metric to watch. Bottom line ROI, are you retaining? Are you getting a margin somewhere between 5 and say 20% every year, so that you can reinvest into programs that will strengthen you? Are you getting new members? Are you retaining those members, and or getting deeper engagement, which is a key leading indicator for retention? Do you, as an organization, have the impact and influence you need over peer groups, organizations you're trying to influence? Could be government or the regulator or other bodies, and brand awareness. And as you think about these types of growth, I just want you to think, well, don't they all kind of work together? Yeah, they do. But a good strategy will figure 2 to 3 of them at a time as the lead driver, because you can't focus on everything. You got to focus on, okay, we need, what is our objective here? And the others will follow. But when you think in terms of growth and strengthening, here's just our 6 basic categories that we see for all associations. Ready for the future, what do? I've mentioned the value proposition audit earlier. It's a great place to start saying, do I have a communication problem? Do I have a stake problem or a sizzle problem? It's a great one that just unpacks that and helps you prioritize where to invest to strengthen what you're doing. Sometimes the stake is great. You're just not, the description on the menu is not nice enough. Or you're underselling it. Very common associations. You're very humble people. You don't know how to make sure people know why it matters to them. Personas are an important tool that help you really break down those wants and needs into manageable bits, because you're not serving 6,000 individual sets of wants and needs. You need patterns, and data really helps you with that. And dashboarding is really key. It is a fundamental, we believe it. That's why we're here. It's a fundamental skill of a resilient organization. And then get onto a program of measure and manage. That means continual change. And I'm sorry, but you have to be looking at things evolving, because they're evolving on you. and not being stuck in last year-itis. So I think that's the last of our slide. More details in the report, more topics covered about what we heard from about value propositions. I know a link will go out in an email, I think, later on as well, but you can scan this really quickly. And I know Bill and Katrina have some other resources to share with you as well. We'd be happy if you downloaded a copy of the report or ask us any questions anytime. Thanks.
Yeah,
for having us.
recommend that. Read the report myself. It's really good. There's also a blog that goes with it, which I thought was helpful as well. If you're interested in more about engagement scoring, you can download our ebook, and I saw that Katrina posted the link to the webinar about that. There's a bunch of material about that, and happy to answer any questions. So with that, thank everyone for joining us. If there are any remaining questions, happy to hang out for another minute or two and answer those. But otherwise, thank everyone
Thanks, everyone.
for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. I want to thank Christine for joining us. I really learned a lot, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, Bill, it's been great. It's a nice reception and a nice dialogue. I really like the format. Thanks for having me. I hope it helped.
Yeah,
I'm happy to hang here if there's some questions come up, but I know people are busy.
Yeah, I think we'll call it then, but feel free to reach out to us. So we'll be happy to hear from anyone that joined if you think of anything after the fact.
Amazing. Thanks for all the questions. Bill and Katrina, thanks for the support. We'll see you all again. Take care.